Currently, the United States has been expanding secret operations to eliminate drug cartels within Mexico. It seems that the scale of these operations has grown quite a bit. There was even an incident where 2 CIA agents died during a mission. Today, let's take a closer look at this topic. Let's get right into it. From the start, the Trump administration viewed Central and South American drug cartels as a top national security threat, not just a public safety issue, and announced a hardline response. In particular, through the new counterterrorism strategy announced on May 6, the Trump administration strongly expressed its determination to thoroughly neutralize all activities of cartel organizations until not a single deadly drug, armed member, or human trafficking victim can enter U.S. territory. This strategy's main focus is making the total elimination of terrorist threats to the Western Hemisphere the top national priority. Although it's not certain this tough U.S. foreign policy is the direct cause, reports confirm that far more extensive and meticulous cartel crackdowns are now happening across Mexico than ever before. There have been cases where members of major cartels have died under suspicious circumstances. There are also frequent incidents where manufacturing facilities explode. Especially in border areas and major transport routes, it is widely believed that a series of highly precise strike operations, presumed to be based on intelligence sharing with the US military, are being carried out, seriously shaking the command structure within the cartels. Let's take a look at some examples. At the end of March, an incident occurred on a highway near Mexico City where a suspected cartel member died in a mysterious explosion. In this incident, cartel member Francisco Beltran was killed instantly at the scene along with his driver. The video captured the vehicle engulfed in massive flames. Francisco Beltran was identified as a mid-level executive in the Sinaloa cartel, one of Mexico's most notorious drug trafficking organizations. It is reported that this operation was led by the Ground Branch, a secret CIA organization. As the US government maintains a zero-tolerance policy by treating cartel activities on the same level as terrorist threats and blocking all illegal routes into the country, it is highly likely that the crackdown operations in Mexico will become even harsher and more widespread. The Trump administration is moving ahead with concrete plans to cut off cartel funding and destroy their strongholds, aiming to end the cycle of drug abuse and human rights abuses spilling into American society. The intensity and scope of this crackdown taking place inside Mexico serve as an indicator of the effectiveness of the anti-terrorism strategy proposed by the United States, and it appears to be a major turning point for the eradication of criminal organizations throughout Central and South America in the future. In addition, the CIA is currently aiming to dismantle the cartel network. It is reported that their goal is not only to eliminate the top bosses, but also to remove all the middlemen and distributors. President Trump designated several Mexican cartels as terrorist organizations, expanding U.S. authority. However, the main issue is that this covert operation lacks Mexico's consent, which is a major problem. In April, 2 CIA agents participated in a drug enforcement operation in Chihuahua, northern Mexico, and died in a traffic accident. When it was revealed that they were CIA agents, the Mexican government also became aware that the United States was conducting covert operations in Mexico without permission. As a result, Mexico strongly protested. Claudia Sheinbaum, president of Mexico, said on April 28 she sent a formal diplomatic protest to the U.S. urging action to prevent U.S. agents from joining drug enforcement operations without prior approval. President Sheinbaum of Mexico objected, stating that while sharing security information is welcome, allowing foreign agents or military to operate in Mexico violates its sovereignty. Because a secret operation occurred without Mexico's consent, diplomatic tensions between the U.S. and Mexico persist. Of course, the current U.S. government is increasing external pressure on the cartel issue in Mexico to an unprecedented level. Although the U.S. Central Intelligence Agency officially denies allegations that its agents are directly involved in armed operations inside Mexican territory, reports from the field convey a much more urgent and different reality. In particular, President Donald Trump has consistently expressed his willingness not to rule out the possibility of directly deploying the U.S. military if that's what it takes to fundamentally eliminate the threat of Mexican cartels. This signals to the international community that cartels are seen not just as criminals, but as military targets that threaten national security. The Trump administration has repeatedly warned that if Mexico doesn't meet U.S. expectations or deliver concrete results in fighting cartels, there will be consequences. While the United States emphasizes the principle of prioritizing cooperation between sovereign nations, it has also made it clear that if Mexico's response is deemed insufficient, the U.S. may take independent action regardless of Mexico's consent. These independent actions could mean intense military operations, like precision drone strikes or the deployment of special forces, increasing pressure on Mexican authorities. Some might say that sending the U.S. military is going too far. The ongoing discussion about the possibility of the US military directly deploying force within Mexican territory is fundamentally based on the undeniable fact that Mexican cartels have evolved far beyond mere criminal organizations and have become highly advanced paramilitary groups. They already have firepower similar to national armies and are making notable strides in equipment modernization. Cartels are using improvised armored vehicles, called monster trucks, in combat to boost defense and breakthrough abilities during urban warfare and ambushes. They are actively using unmanned attack systems, modifying civilian drones to drop explosives, conduct reconnaissance, and try to control the air. They use semi-submersibles and homemade submarines to move large amounts of drugs by sea, making detection by radar and the US Coast Guard's surveillance network very difficult. This strengthening of firepower has inevitably transformed the nature of the battlefield inside Mexico into a modern, irregular warfare battleground. Currently, the rugged jungle areas and complex urban regions of Mexico have been transformed into environments very similar to the battlefields where the US military engaged resistance forces in Afghanistan or the Middle East in the past. The cartels use their knowledge of the terrain to launch ambushes and surprise attacks, pressuring police and the Mexican military. As a result, maintaining public order is now impossible. They've decided the police can't eliminate the cartels, which is why the US feels justified in stepping up covert operations in Mexico. Since the cartel's level of armament is already no different from that of terrorist groups, the US is strengthening its argument that military intervention is inevitable as a defensive measure to protect its own security. Heavy weapons such as anti-aircraft missiles and heavy machine guns owned by cartels are beyond what Mexican authorities can handle, prompting the US to consider independent military action. As the whole of Mexico is turning into a massive site of irregular warfare, the possibility of US military intervention is moving beyond a mere threat and is taking shape as an actual operational plan. The US administration thinks the paramilitary cartels threaten border security and continues to stress counterterrorism strategies' effectiveness. As the cartels' weapon systems become more sophisticated and their tactics evolve, the United States will try to put more pressure on them by mobilizing even more powerful military equipment and intelligence assets. The expansion of the secret war within Mexico is evidence that the cartels have already grown into armed groups beyond the control of the state, and this is further strengthening the justification for the United States to deploy military force within Mexican territory. The cartel's advanced weaponry ironically becomes the main reason for direct US military intervention. This high-handed attitude from the United States clashes with Mexico's sovereignty and is causing serious tension between the two countries. President Trump maintains a hardline stance, insisting that he will not hesitate to take decisive action to eliminate enemies beyond the border if that's what it takes to stop the influx of drugs threatening the lives of American citizens. If the Mexican government fails to produce results from a strong crackdown in response to US demands, there is a higher likelihood than ever that the United States will take the drastic step of unilateral military intervention, just as it has warned. Of course, for now, the possibility of direct US military involvement is low due to the war in the Middle East, but depending on Mexico's response, there is still a strong possibility that the United States could expand its operations. Also, on April 30th, the United States indicted 10 Mexican officials. 10 current and former Mexican officials were indicted on drug trafficking charges. The US Department of Justice said Rocha, Sinaloa's governor, got bribes and election help for years to protect the Sinaloa cartel. The issue is that Rocha, the governor of Sinaloa, is currently in office and is a member of the Morena party, the same party as President Sheinbaum, which is drawing attention. Governor Rocha strongly objected to the US Department of Justice's indictment, saying it is not based on facts and that such actions by the United States are an infringement on sovereignty. Mexican President Sheinbaum also held a press conference and said that without evidence, it seems politically motivated and sharply criticized the United States for violating sovereignty. US authorities have only presented a handwritten note listing suspects' nicknames and a notebook recording bribe amounts allegedly paid by the drug trafficking organization. Diplomatic tensions between the United States and Mexico are likely to persist for now. Given the seriousness of the drug cartel issue, I hope efforts move toward eliminating the cartels.